will say I like the tape. Like I feel like speaking to tables easier than everyone just sitting in a row looking at you. I feel like she's your mom. I feel like she's like a mom. Don't worry. Yeah, it's just talking about your challenges. You're free flowing it. I think the more unique it is, the more like whatever you've experienced and like working with TMCs and just the whole relationship, it'll be helpful to understand for people in the crowd. I was going to introduce the theme so I'll do the introductions for us, and then on the slide after for the objectives, like just talk about the theme at a high level first a little bit. First slide, yeah.
You can talk like 20 minutes, Michael, and then
Yeah. When people say Northland Power, do they say they incorporated too? Typically? Northland Power do incorporated. I think I'm also going to keep it to just like one question each. Like if you say, I'm not going to like follow up really. If that makes sense, like yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to like take that and maybe run with it like with a closing point or something. But I'm not going to just spam either of you with four questions. If you're going to talk about it anyway. Filibusters. Let's make it up. Should I just start talking? Hello. I think we're just about to get started here. Do we have 11:15? Cool. Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining here today. Really excited about this session. Let's talk about you and me. Ultimately, our goal here is to redefine the buyer and the TMC relationship. We'll really see the point of view for both our amazing panelists here. My name is, ooh, that is not it. Let's go that way. This might be the wrong. Okay, got it. Well, nice to meet you all. My name is Nitin Balaji. I'm a management consultant at Aquis Consulting Group, specifically in the corporate travel and procurement strategy practices. We're joined here today by Gemma Marquez, who is a global corporate services manager from Northland Power Incorporated, as well as Michael Hook, director of sales for the Americas for FCM Travel. So really excited. We're all really excited to be here today. I think it's a burning topic in the industry. Relationship management, really diving deeper into what both parties are really looking for. And we made a fun play on really the dating scene. So as you all know, I think dating can be challenging. Finding the right partner, finding the right, person for you, timing, all the different things that are kind of challenges in dating will be kind of, a play on words or kind of alluded to in our relationship here. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump into it. Some of our main objectives today is really just uncovering what the evolving needs of the travel manager is today. As you all know, the travel industry is rapidly evolving. Policies are changing, business units, organizations are rapidly evolving, new technologies. So as the demand of travel is back and is increasing rapidly, I think finding the right solution, the right partner to really alleviate some of those pain points will be key. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a lot of that today. Really, what are businesses expecting from their TMCs? I think some of the challenge is really making sure that it's not just under the rug, but really making sure that everything is clear, transparent, open. And then another objective is the overall changing dynamics of the travel industry. How does that impact the TMC's service models as well as their profitability? So in this relationship, there's two sides, right? And both have their preferences, their needs. And I think from the TMC side, as they are adjusting their service levels for different level sizes of companies, tailoring to their specific needs, and making sure that they are profitable is still key. And then ultimately, what is required for both parties to facilitate a true partnership? Just like in dating, you've got to find the middle ground and really see how to move forward. Okay, so jumping into profile number one, the buyer's been burned before. Let's say they've been on Hinge, they're swiping through, and they keep going on these dates. They're nervous about sharing their true feelings, right? When you're dating a bunch of different people you may not like, you start closing off. For the perfect partner, our buyer needs first and foremost to prove that they are different from the rest. So how do they stand out from the pack and actually deliver on what their promises? So that no one's really looking for false promises here. It's really what can you provide and what can you bring to the table. And then ultimately, I think one of the main key points here is that spark. So as you're going through, dating and as well as, in the corporate world when you're looking for the right partner, that spark. So typically there's the same requirements checklist. As you go through the checklist, then it's kind of what's that X factor? What is that X factor that's driving that spark? And then the buyer will be ready to settle down. They're looking for high service levels, the best rates and competitive fees, and ultimately just transparency and reassurance. So Gemma, what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing today, when looking for the right TMC partner?
Well, as a travel manager, right, we just changed our TMC last year, so I'm just trying to recall what is that experience. For me, I think the challenge would be the TMC not understanding the needs of the company, and it's not really flexible enough to actually willing to evolve to what we need. As a medium-sized company, we need someone who will grow with us. So I think one of those challenges would be not clear understanding of the requirements that we have, as well as, with that being said, I think there will be a communication breakdown as well. There's no follow through, and I feel like the previews or like the TMCs, the challenges that I experienced would be not having that connection. So with no connection, there's no understanding. So I think that's a challenge that I had before.
No, that absolutely makes sense. So we will talk about it a bit later in the presentation, but what exactly are you looking for? So those are some of your challenges, right? Not being able to meet the requirements. But what are you looking for in terms of a long-term, partner or long-term solution?
I think as a partner, so I'm just going to relate it to the dating scene, right? I need someone that can actually have a good cost-effective solution for our company. So I don't know, someone who has money? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, I think number one would be the cost when you're doing the RFP. I think that's the number one thing. Number two would be the knowledge, right? So as they actually present during the RFP, the demos, you want someone who is knowledgeable in terms of like what they can provide, in terms of the application that they're willing to provide a company. As well as, I think as a travel manager, I need someone who I am comfortable with, who is very responsive. So you will feel that during the RFP stage we're in, if the vendor is really someone you feel that will prioritize you and would want to grow with you as a company. So I think those are the main key points that I'm looking for as a client.
So I am curious. So within that RFP process, how can the TMC? What are maybe some examples or some thoughts you might have on how they can, show that transparency, that their willingness to meet you, maybe a little bit further into the middle. Just talking about the RFP process a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's more of like responsive. Number one is when you ask questions, they are responsive and they're willing and flexible enough to actually adhere to what you're asking. I've been to a lot of demos when we were doing the RFP stage, and there are just some TMCs wherein they're very upfront and they're very, how do I say it? Just like in a dating scene, they're very, like, that they're very confident that, I'm a big TMC provider and I can just do everything for you. But sometimes for clients, what we need is someone you feel that you will be the priority. And if you're just providing that, providing that experience to us that you're too big, we feel like, okay, when we actually go into that partnership, I will not feel like we will be like a medium-sized company that will not be a priority. So I think, yeah, I'm not sure, did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you definitely did. Awesome. Yep. Thank you, Gemma. We'll move forward. So that's profile one. Now we have profile two, the TMC itself. So the TMC is looking for a partner who can see, their true value, what they are bringing to the table, and they promise that the most important thing to them is that the partner will be successful, and they want to make sure that they can collaborate on new strategies, new approaches, and they really are looking for an open and honest relationship. At that point, then they'll know that the buyer would be the one. Okay, Michael, you have a plethora of experience, working with buyers, going through the RFP process, selling, and really, a leader in relationship management. But what are some of the challenges you've experienced, when working with buyers, going through the process, and really trying to showcase who you guys are throughout the overall process?
Yeah, and I think Gemma mentioned buyers want to understand or have something tailored to them. I think the challenge for the TMC or any supplier, to be honest, is a guarded buyer and not giving the information so that as a supplier we can tailor a solution to their needs. I think it's very challenging when we go into a process and we don't get all of the information, or they're reluctant to share certain aspects of the program. In order for us to be successful and truly determine if we are the right partner for somebody, again, any supplier can apply to that, we need to get the information. We need to understand the needs from start to finish and kind of everything that's underneath the hood of a program. And once we're given that, then we have the opportunity to kind of be a little bit more successful and find that partner. It's like any relationship. You need to get to know the person. You need to get to understand them before you can actually determine if they're the right fit. And I think that's key, understanding we may not always be the right fit as a supplier for a specific customer, but if we go into a process, sometimes maybe we're spinning our wheels because we don't have all that information.
Thank you, Michael. I do have a follow-up question. So how much do you think a willingness to change, really affects the process, and how does that make your job easier?
I think when you get into a situation where there is a want or a need to change, I think that is when you see a buyer share and be more open with the communication process. I think situations where it may just be an exercise and you're kind of just going through the due diligence of running an RFP, it becomes a little more limiting what information you're given, the sharing, the ability to engage throughout the process. And so I think you kind of can get a grasp, and having done this for a while, you kind of start to understand when someone is interested in actually making a change, or at least exploring, do they have the right partner already, or is there something else out there? And obviously the environment of the travel space has changed so much, over the last few years, that there's a lot that us on the TMC side specifically need to show buyers that we can do, we can facilitate, we can meet the needs across the board. And so I think, again, going back to, without that understanding, we can't actually tailor or position a solution that might be right for that customer. Otherwise, we're just simply, going through the motions, every single time.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving forward. So we now, we're showing both profiles comparatively to each other. You guys heard a bit both from Gemma and Michael's side on kind of what their challenges are, what they're looking for, to secure this relationship. And as we see, not everything is perfectly aligned. There is an opportunity to get aligned. I think looking for a long-term solution, there might be opportunities to meet in the middle, or a certain side might have to, extend a little bit further than the other. But that's ultimately why we're here. We want to understand where can we meet in the middle, where might the TMC have to put a little bit more effort, or the buyer side, to secure a long-term relationship. So diving a bit deeper into our mismatches, between the two dating profiles, right? And we want to know, I guess mismatch number one is really transparency. I think Michael was just touching on it right now, is transparency is a mutual problem from both the buyer and the TMC's perspective. Buyers are nervous about sharing their true feelings. In this case, right, they sometimes don't feel comfortable sharing all the requirements, everything that's needed, potentially in the RFP process, or maybe having those one-off calls with the TMC themselves to disclose all the information potentially needed to make that solution as customizable as possible. TMCs are jaded by buyer distrust. So just building off that a little bit, if one side is not necessarily disclosing all the right information, it might kind of throw the TMC off from even bidding in the first place, or ultimately wanting to show the effort and the care that they do have to the potential buyer. And then ultimately, both sides do need to prove their legitimacy and commitment. At the end of the day, going through this process is time, money, resource, effort. To make it worthwhile for both sides to kind of go through the middle, they want to know if it's worth it. So I do have a question for Gemma. So typically, when you're going out to bid, what are your biggest challenges with transparency? From an internal point of view, maybe some of your experiences, or just things you've seen in the industry. Why are typically buyers holding things, cards close to their chest?
Okay, I think for me, I will just base it on my experience. So last year, the first thing that the TMC will ask for you is the travel spent, right? So as a company, I feel like, and then after COVID, so when the requirements are being asked from us, like what regions are we going to deploy the travel spend? When we were looking at our travel spend, it's not a lot. So I think that's actually one of the things that we feel that we are thinking, are we going to be transparent about that? Because number one, it might drive the cost up, right? So when we do the RFP, we feel that, okay, when we share this travel spend, we will not get the attention that we need from the TMCs that we are actually trying to ask to do the demos. So that's number one. Number two is more of like the travel policy. So we are still, like, after COVID, we are in a new world. So we're still trying to figure out the travel policy, what makes sense. So it's not really that clear, and that's I think that's the second thing that the TMC will ask from the buyer. And I feel like sharing that information, and you're disorganized, you're not yet clear. We feel that they might not have a clear understanding of what we need. So I think those are the two things that come into my mind. Like, cost would be the number one, and also like the policies. It has to be ready and clear so that they can actually properly bid.
Got it. Thank you, Gemma. Okay, Michael, I know unlocking your heart is very tough, but how exactly, can a buyer unlock your heart?
I mean, at the end of the day, listen, it needs the end result is a mutually beneficial relationship. Beneficial for the TMC, beneficial for the buyer. TMC meeting the needs and specifics of what that buyer's travel program represents, and the buyer, supporting the TMC side of things to understand. But I think for us on the TMC side, I mean, it's imperative that from a transparency perspective, there is so much, again, things like NDC, the topics are like that you have to be transparent whether you can or cannot do certain things, because you're only setting yourself up for failure down the road if you're not transparent earlier in the relationship. And so I think, I had mentioned on the previous slide that getting information and getting to know what the needs of a specific buyer are to be able to solution something properly is critical. On the other side, it's also critical for us when we do get that information to be able to share and be perfectly transparent on what our capabilities as a specific supplier is for that specific buyer.
Okay, that's still pretty hard. Okay, let's see. Moving into our second mismatch. Ultimately, buyers do need evidence of the TMC's efficacy. What we mean by that are, what are the differentiators? Why would the buyer necessarily want to go through change, whether they have an existing TMC, whether they don't have any travel program at all? As you guys, many of you know, with digital transformation, digital change, it takes a lot of time, resource, effort, money. Many stakeholders are involved. So what are the, key differentiators? And really, both sides are still evolving rapidly right now. As you guys know, the travel industry is rapidly evolving, but so is every industry. So really, as both parties are kind of moving pretty fast, how is it going to be worth it? So I do have a question for you, Gemma. How exactly can a TMC differentiate themselves?
Okay. How can a TMC differentiate? I think for me, the willingness to have an open communication, because you really can distinguish that during the RFP stage, right? You already know if this person, or no, it's not a person, this partnership actually wants to evolve and grow with you. So for me, the differentiator would be, of course, you have to meet all the criteria and the requirements that we have. But apart from that, right, I mean, cost-wise as well, but apart from that, having that comfort that this TMC will really provide what you need, as well as understand where you want to go as a company, and also willing to be flexible and change with you. Because as you know, travel is like a never-ending change. There are so many changes happening. So for us, and as a company as well, right? So we need a TMC who will support that change, whether it's like, we're doing global, or suddenly, we're actually scaling down with travel. So someone who really will make you feel that, we will still provide you the service that you will need, regardless of what changes you will go through as a company. So I don't know if it's a feeling. And for our company, it's not only me who is the sole decision maker. So we actually build up like a team, right? So there are questionnaires, and it's really like a thought-through process before we actually find a TMC. And if we all feel the same way about a certain vendor, then we'll go ahead and proceed.
Thanks, Gemma. Okay, Michael, how do you necessarily, when you're going through these different discussions, how do you guys, as a TMC, differentiate yourselves in the market? How do you prove to a buyer that change would be worth it?
I mean, at the end of the day, we have to show. We have to, show that we have the capabilities necessary to meet the specific needs that a buyer's kind of laid out. So I think it is us actually demonstrating that capabilities, whether that be through physical demonstration or whether that be through customers that are already working, with a specific TMC. I think, I know there's a number of buyers as well as TMCs. I often hear, well, all TMCs are the same, and I think everyone in here from a TMC perspective can agree that that's not actually the case. Yes, we may all book travel, but there's so much more behind each of us, and we are all different. And I think I would say to the buyers, I would challenge the TMC within your conversations to prove what it is you're looking to have, within your partnership moving forward. Challenge them. Can you meet these capabilities, and have the TMC show it to you throughout that process? I think that's what the RFP process is meant to do, is to give you the opportunity to see various suppliers and which one kind of aligns and which one is going to, find partnership, long term. So I think from a buyer perspective, I would absolutely, suggest challenging us on the TMC side to prove what is different from each and every one of us, because we all are, and we all, strive to want to, win the trust of all customers. But I think it's important for the buyers to certainly challenge us on the TMC side to prove it.
Awesome. Thank you both. Okay, moving forward to our final mismatch. As many of you know, in supplier relationship management, buyer relationship management, and just kind of relationships in real life. I promise it's not like a therapy session, but as you find the right partner and you get into a relationship, that's just step one. Step two is ensuring the partnership continues, making sure that you're growing together. And in this case, I think the dedication and commitment to rapidly, to scaling together, growing together, it typically is a mismatch. So TMC change can be, as we've mentioned before, time intensive. How do you prove that it would be worth it for the buyer, and just improving the efficacy of the TMC change? I think a big topic now for our second point is knowledge management as well as change management. I think if you can get the right solution, whether it's a technology or TMC, whatever it might be, but not invest adequately in your resources to really learn how to use it or where to go, whether you're for escalations, approvals, all the above, then that can be an issue as well, right? Then you just have the TMC, or you have the solution, but no one knows how to use it. And then ultimately, how do we move beyond being procedural to an actual partnership, a long-term partnership? How can to be mutually beneficial? So Gemma, how can you in a TMC be marriage material? And I know you've mentioned some of the key traits of just open transparency, really dedication to understanding your policy, all the above. But what are maybe some of what is maybe one key thing that you could take away to be marriage material for a TMC?
That's hard. Marriage material with I think I've mentioned a while ago that that partnership or that TMC is willing to grow with you, right? So it's like looking for a partner. If you know that person is willing to grow with you and evolve with you and just be there and making sure to understand and listen what you need, I think that's the factor, the key factor for me to actually settling down. Not in real life.
So, Michael, so ultimately, what are some, maybe some specifics that you do, that you take into your day to day, that can really showcase, and we talked about it a little bit before, but really showcase your ability to grow with your buyer, with the partner, to be that long-term solution. Maybe specifically even talking about change management and knowledge management. How do you kind of handle that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, trust and really accountability within the partnership. I think that starts to establish a good foundation right from the onset. If there are going to be bumps in the road in any relationship, and the TMC buyer one certainly has those bumps. I just think the accountability to the buyer is absolutely necessary, and if we can prove that and show that, not only through a process of trying to win the trust and win the business, but then also once we become partners, that accountability throughout the relationship, I think, is certainly something that is absolutely necessary from the TMC perspective. And again, I think, when we say trust, just trust, in us, but also us trusting in our buyer, certainly equating it to the relationship, not be jealous when we see our buyers talking to other TMCs. So I think it's trust and accountability are probably the two key pieces that I think are necessary of what the buyer wants out of us, and I think we want out of the customer.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. So kind of just to wrap everything up, we've heard a lot of different points from both Gemma and Michael from their viewpoints for the buyer and the TMC. What we really want to, hone in on is both buyers and TMCs want the same thing. They want a true partnership at the end of the day. And how are we going to get that? There needs to be a willingness to share. It could be specific detailed requirements, stakeholder groups, the ins and outs of what would be helpful to make sure that there is a true partnership and an easy transition for change. So be transparent would be one of our biggest takeaways. Transparency is key. Both TMCs and buyers are struggling with the same thing. At the end of the day, they just need to I think through different solutioning sessions, the more transparent and the communication lines are, you will understand how it will affect different outcomes for each company. So to be flexible. Change is tough, change is hard, but to be flexible and having a willingness to change will definitely be key in establishing a true partnership. And then ultimately, every business, what is valuable is subjective, dependent upon where they are in the market today. So many different factors, right? So making sure that they can meet in the middle, both TMCs and buyers, to meet in the middle and to really understand what each side wants and what's valuable to them really is the key, is our final point, our final outcome. But I think with that, I will open no, that's not it. I'll stop here. But we'll open the floor to any questions from the audience.
Yeah, so we're talking about dating and marriage material. One of the things you were saying before is I'm not a person who likes committee buying, okay? But if you have a committee that's getting together and some of the people are wanting to choose one way and the others are wanting to choose another way, how do you resolve that in a buying situation?
So for us, because we're global, right? So we have to make sure that we include those people in Europe, in Asia, and also here in North America. So yes, that happened. There are a few of our staff who actually prefers another vendor, another TMC. But I think at the end, what happened there is that the majority actually chose the other one, or the one that we are in right now. And we will all gather and be in a meeting before we proceed. Like we just, when we get the results of all the surveys, right, we just don't proceed and say yes. We have to convince them, and they have to have a buy-in as well. Why are we choosing this? So we have to make sure that we understand their points as well. Why are they choosing the other one? And what happened there is more of a communication to the TMC that we are already thinking of choosing, right? So these are the concerns. These are the things that the others feel that you are not meeting right now. What's your answer? And then they will actually provide those information, and then we will try to convince those so that we can have the buy-in for everybody before we proceed. So that's what we did last year before we actually signed a contract with the current TMC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're just maybe waiting for another question, I'll just add, I think something from a TMC perspective when we're kind of challenges, often not being able to know who the key stakeholders are. I think obviously there are committees and there are multiple people choosing. I think it's critically important for us on the TMC side to have some insight and even be able to gain access to some of who these key stakeholders are. I think it helps us be able to understand the needs, because they may be a little bit different than the travel manager procurement. And so being able to understand the full scope of who the stakeholders are, I think, are critically important. And often I know it's very guarded in not wanting to share who those people are, but if I may offer a suggestion, I think being able to gain that access to the stakeholders, and again, it just goes back to the willingness to share and be as open and transparent through the whole process, I think just makes it easier for us on the supplier side to solution something proper.
Hi, Hi, I really loved your ideas about the dating and the marriage material. Suppose we are in a marriage, how do you prevent divorce? That's a very bitter feeling, and I don't want, I would never want to part away with my TMCs but what are the steps or the key takeaways that I, as a buyer could, keep doing, or the TMC, could keep doing to go on a, have it, good, simple.
Okay. So I'll, because you answer like in a relationship context, so I'll answer that as well. So when you're in a relationship, you'll try, right? You'll try to communicate the problems. You'll try to make it work, and you'll document everything so that when you go into a divorce, you can actually present it. No, I'm just kidding. But what I'm saying is that, of course, change is very different. Change is very hard. Like for me as a travel manager, it requires a lot of work. If I can just stay and just adhere to, and like, just accept whatever we have right now, I'll be okay. It's an additional work for me. However, if it is not working anymore, you really have to make that change, and you need to make that call, right? So yeah, you make it work probably a year, months. You try to communicate, these are the changes that we need, and you will hope that the TMC will change. But if not, then it's time. It's time to look for and go out and date other people. So I'm just
Yeah, and I think it's continuing throughout the relationship to be, making sure we're accountable. But then, as I said earlier, from a buyer, continuing to challenge your suppliers to meet the needs that you're wanting in an evolving landscape that the travel industry has become. It's important for buyers to go out and see what might be different. And that doesn't necessarily need to be done within an RFP process, but I think communication and making sure you're having those conversations with your suppliers, with your TMC, can allow for the TMC to then continue to prove and be accountable to you to meet, kind of the needs of your evolving program.
Yes, I had a question. How does this relationship feel about the third parties, like the independent hotels? Are we in-laws or for this relationship, or are we just friends for benefits or something? No, but in my experience and with all the changes going on now in the industry, as a hotel, especially an independent hotel, it's hard to okay, who do I actually date? Do they swipe me, or just in terms of corresponding with all those parties involved, how do we insert ourselves in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the responsibility of both. So, the buyer and the TMC to be talking the TMC to be proactive in bringing new suppliers or new opportunities within the program to the partner. So yeah, I'd say I don't know if it's in-laws or whatever, but I think just, it's the responsibility of both parties to decide whether they want a third person involved in the marriage.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. So I agree with Michael. We work hand in hand in terms of getting those independent hotels. So for our company, we have preferred hotels, and it's also feedback from our staff as well. And then once we feel that we want to get into a contract or have a corporate rate with a certain hotel, the TMC, we inform the TMC or account manager, and then they help us through that. So it's like a partnership, really. We work hand in hand to be able to get the best, most cost effective for our company and for our staff.
There was a question right there.
Yes, I was given the microphone, so I'm going to ask a question, really of the crowd of travel buyers that are in the room, and perhaps they could answer it. In the interest of transparency, is there a reason why travel buyers, when they create an RFP along with the procurement team, don't tell us in advance the weight of each question? You can have an RFP that's got 50 pages and find out at the end that you weren't rewarded the business because you scored low in one area. But we'd have no idea in advance how you're weighting, what's important. Gemma, the first thing you said when you started speaking was that cost was your number one, right? You said that. So if cost is number one, that should be weighted obviously as more important than other aspects and other answers. So is there a reason why we are not provided in advance what the weight of all those questions are on a 50 or 60 or 70 page RFP that comes to us?
I mean, take a stab at it. I think it depends, right? The classic answer. I think it just depends really sometimes on the buyer and the relationship with procurement, their willingness. It's trying to standardize the process sometimes. I agree, and that's kind of the overall goal of the session, right? Is moving forward. It's an open, clear line of communication if decided upon from the start. So I think establishing that from the very start, whether or not you're going to disclose information or not, I think is key. So not changing as you go through the process, and one bidder provides more information than the other, and like adjusting there. So keeping it very standardized, making a decision early on. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's what the goal is, to shift that in that direction where when you're putting together RFP, you're giving your best chance to win, right? That's the goal. You don't want someone just bidding on something they have no idea about. But that's just mine.
So I think as a buyer, we become so engrossed in our own problems when we are going out and searching the market that we forget that the partner that we are looking for also needs to know the scale or the weightage of our problems. We assume what is important to me or my department is also important for the TMC, and that is what they are going to reciprocate with. So I think we assume at the end of the day, what is important to me is going to be given to me regardless of if I'm asking or not. So I think clear communication may be able to resolve that problem. So assumptions could only create more barriers. So I think that may be the issue.
Hello. Hi, sorry. So I have a question actually for the TMC. I'm just interested to know how TMC is evolving to keep up with modern technology. Right. The reason is for that is that a lot of us uses mobile phone now, right? And younger generations are coming into the workforce. They really want to say, I want to book an air ticket. I want to change my itinerary through an app. I don't want to get on a call because it's too long on a call. Sometimes they don't call back. Travelers get frustrated. And then I want to change the TMC. Right? Usually that's the case because travel is a very personal thing. Right? So just to...
I mean, I think from the TMC side, if we're not evolving with technology and staying current, whether that's either innovating our own technology or investing in third-party technology to support, then we'll be left behind. I mean, there's no other way around it. So the TMCs who are going to continue to evolve with technology will be the TMCs that 5 years from now be having the same conversations. If not, then you're going to get left behind. And I think what you're seeing within the industry and the emergence of new entrants of pieces of technology, it's you got to adapt, you've got to evolve, and as a TMC, we have to evolve along with that so that we can meet the needs of the changing traveler, which is a younger. Yes, they want it on their phone. They want it, to do it themselves. And so, if we don't evolve, then the TMC, and it can be done either through investment or through innovation, in my opinion.
There are a good number of TMCs here at the show this week. So why don't you drop by the expo floor, meet a few of them, and they can probably answer those questions for you.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. One more question. Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining us.